Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unscripted and Unchained, episode 11. My name is DM Bloodworth, and this is a video for a new community on Facebook that I was invited to join, and basically it is a community for video bloggers um, to post these little short commentaries on RPGs, RPG gaming, whether it be online or tabletop, or whether it be computer or other modes of playing RPGs. And what I thought I would do this evening is talk a little bit about why you should write your own adventures. And this is something that I had always done, even going back to, when I first started playing role-playing games with, Dungeons and Dragons and I would say you know, by the early 1980s, I was, about 13, 14 years old and already almost exclusively writing my own adventures for Dungeons and Dragons. I started writing my own adventures shortly after learning how to play Call of Cthulhu, so I started writing my own adventures there. And for the most part, um, throughout my pen and paper RPG career, or hobby, I should say, I've been writing my own adventures, and I think that there's a variety of reasons why you should do it, and the least of which is that you save money in doing it. Even though adventures are kind of expensive, if you look at the books that they put out that are hardcover bound adventure books. If you look at and I don't want to single out any particular game companies, but if you see $30 hardcover adventure books, even though there might be campaigns, they take a while to play. Um, you can do the same thing on your own in writing adventures, for yourself, and so that's the least of it is the money issue. I think more importantly, when you're writing your own adventures, you're you're writing to your interest, you're writing to your player's interest, so you're going to start crafting adventures that are very specific for your players and their characters, and you can start to really involve them in the storytelling process of your campaign, and that's regardless of what game system you're actually playing. The other advantage is that you become, I believe you become more skilled at using the game system, and you can start to look at. I got a strange pop up here. Um, you can start to look at, how do I go about altering these game rules to really match the gameplay that I'm looking for, and the gameplay that my players are looking for, and things that will enhance the overall storytelling and gaming experience. So, when we look at, various things now, like I said, I'm not saying that there isn't a great value in, some of these adventure, the what I call prefab adventures. So, for instance, like I've been playing Conan RPG. This is put out by Modifius. It's a 2D20 system, and the booklet that came in Wave One, the book is called Jeweled Thrones of the Earth, and it's a beautiful book, and there are 8 adventures in this booklet, and they're well written. They're a lot of fun, and you can learn a lot from them as far as crafting adventures. And they do give you other, NPC ideas, and they even add you know, some monsters and creatures and other situations that are not in any of the other books. And so, you know, it's a great resource to have, but running adventures through it, I find that, you know, you're kind of pigeonholed with having to run the adventure the way that it's written. And if you're going to modify it based on, well, I only have, I have one player that wants to play, then I have to modify the whole thing to match the challenge needed for a solo player. Or I might have to modify it to include various story aspects that will explain why that solo player or even that group of, my players, what brings them there. And if I'm going to have to make that much modification to the pre-generated story, of the adventure, then I might as well write my own. And so, even though I'm glad to have the book because it is a good resource for teaching me those structures and everything, and it's a great resource to have, just to say, I have it. It's part of the collection, and and it does give me ideas. I just as soon write some of my own adventures, and I mean, adventure modules can come in, as small and as cheaply as, when night falls for a Mifrog. So this book here was probably under $6 if I recall correctly. It's a very short adventure. It's a fun adventure to run. I know a lot of people that have run it and they had a good time with it. The downside to it, even though this one is cheap and it teaches you all of the other advantages, like I said before, the downside of it is that, there's hundreds of people running around with this. There's probably thousands of people running around with, with the jeweled thrones of the earth, because, this was part of the Kickstarter, and there were several thousand Kickstarters. So whether it be in hardcover or PDF, there's thousands of these floating around. And so, from the player standpoint, when you're playing a prefabricated adventure, the you're going to have players that have seen the story before, so there's no surprise for them in running this. It would be like me going back and as a player going through the Tomb of Horrors, or any of those you know very well known adventure modules. I've done them already, and so have most of the other really hardcore dedicated RPGers out there. We've played these things before. It's almost like when you go to a computer MMO. Like recently, there was some reason to go back to Age of Conan. And I'm going through the very beginning of Age of Conan to test out some of the new server perks and everything that they're giving you. And, I played the character up to about level 7, and I've been through that series of adventures and, those series of quests already several dozen times. And it's to the point that I really can't bring myself to go through it again. And, that's the thing with some of those prefab adventures. So, looking at some of the other systems that, the core rule books supply you with, you can they're really set up for you to set up, create your own adventures anyway. So with with the new Conan RPG, I mean, you get the Game Master's Toolkit, and it basically sets up on how to write, you know, how to write and create adventures. It's not as thick as this huge thing I lifted. Obviously, it's only about maybe 50 pages long. Now, these are adventures that that have been released. So these are shorter than the booklets, but you know these are still adventures that everyone that is part of the Kickstarter has access to. Again, good. It's a good adventure. I'm sure that they're a lot of fun to run through players with. Um, these are some adventures that were written back during beta, by players, and shared out amongst us on the on a Google Drive. And this here adventure was written by David Thomas. And so there's a lot fewer people that have access to this adventure. David wrote several, that I've read through. And so within the communities, I think he had three here. Here's one here by Daryl Miller. The Serpent Caves of Shem, again, came out during the, during beta. And so there's a lot of GMs out there that are writing their own adventures and then supplying them, providing them out there. And so there's less, there's less of them out there, so there's less of a chance of players knowing them. This is another one by Daryl Miller, and this is Conan and the Ape King of Kush. Very short, adventure. Interesting to see how, and this is a narrative, a more narrative approach to an adventure, so it's kind of unique. This is an adventure that I wrote back during beta, and this is Shards of Ymir, and this is like a 2-session adventure, so it takes about 6 hours to run. It took me, probably because it was my first delving into it, probably took me about 4 hours to write this adventure, and it was not really using that toolkit, which wasn't available, at the time. Now, adventures that I write now using that toolkit, like I have Fjord of Iron and Blood, and The Spear in the Storm. So these are using the GM's toolkit and also my own process of writing adventures. And these are really designed for the One Shot Gaming Group, inspired by them. So what I'm doing is I'm writing adventures that I think will run approximately 3 hours. And so far I've run about 5 adventures, and they've all run, between 2.5 and 3 hours long. So, I think it's pretty safe to say that the system, that I've developed and I'm using has been working. But I've written probably about 5 or 6 adventures for the new Conan RPG, and it's just that they're just received a lot differently too. So when I tell the gaming groups that I'm involved with, all right, I'm rolling out another adventure that I've recently written up, and it's all right, cool. There's something new out there, something that we couldn't have seen before. For Mifrog, same thing. I mean, same situation. So this adventure here is a bloody endeavor. I believe this was the very first adventure that I wrote for Mifrog, and something that I'll probably run again, because only 5 other people have actually experienced this adventure. And so when I put it back out there again, it's going to be fresh for just about anybody else who joins in. And I've written several for Mifrog. So No Wings for the Fallen. A lot of people probably seen the pictures. I pull the pictures off the internet. The same as probably very many other people. And then Fair Winds, Bloody Shores, which is another adventure that I had written. And I wait a couple months and I can run them again, and for a whole new group of people. And so, those are all the advantages that I think that that players should be aware of, and aspiring GMs should be aware of, is that there's a lot to be gained by writing your own adventures. There's a lot of great learning that takes place while you're writing those, and trying to get get a system that works out great for yourself and great for your players. It also actually teaches you a lot of the process of organizing and laying out templates of the actual writing process, and putting in all these. I'm by no means a great expert of doing these things, but just piecing together a regular, like a format, and putting a title and putting a picture, and then boxing, putting in boxes, and creating and dropping in, like regular monster charts, and things like that. Just developing a format has been a good learning experience as well. So once again, I am by no means an expert at these things, and I'm just trying to put out there that I think that there's a lot of advantage to writing your own adventures, and everybody should certainly give it a try. And you don't need years of experience before you start writing your own adventures. You just need some some familiarity with the game system, and really listen to your players, and see, get to know their characters, and look at the characters when you're designing the adventure. And I think that you'll be happy with the product that you produce yourself. All right, so I wanted to keep this short, and hopefully that is. So you all enjoy. Happy gaming, and with the upcoming weekend, I look forward to seeing quite a few of you out there in Google Hangouts or whatever other gaming gaming sites and everything that we get onto. So you all have a good night.